into my studio in Amsterdam. For me, it's the sculptural shapes that smoke makes. And, you know, just the moment that you think you have it, it already disappears. And that's why I also from a symbolic perspective, I think it really ties into the past 2 years that we've had. You know, everything has been distorted and changed and was very unattainable. I underestimated how complicated I would find it to make something which is, you know, because it's super sculptural in 3D because it makes these movements, but then it also does this, and it appears from a very small point and then it branches out and it becomes more fluffy. So it's to kind of get that iridescence that smoke makes and how it captures light sometimes and how it mirrors light also in a certain way is difficult. So I've really tried to you know, to work on the gold afterwards, to have a kind of gradient in the color of the stones. And where you're stone setting, you can make shapes like this, but it's quite difficult to then also have it spiral.
Of course,
So all these elements together have made it challenging. And I mean, it's how I usually work with a collection is that we start with a basic collection, and then I over the years I add to it. So, for instance, stone carving is going to be the next capsule collection that we add to it. So, pieces of smoke carved in stone, something which, you know, feels like it should disappear or change as soon as you look at it, is now something that you solidify in something 3D forever.
Exactly.
So that there's a bit of a contradiction there, but I think that also makes it exciting. And people associate me with, you know, with animal jewelry or things which are directly connected to nature. And this, for me, is also a very clear kind of like new direction. Also because it's very diamond heavy. Usually we use diamonds, but more kind of like pavé setting and sometimes with a big stone. But the look is kind of like a very diamond heavy collection. So it's I think it's very important to also keep challenging yourself and doing new things and not kind of continuing, you know, otherwise you become a bit of a one-trick pony. And that's, I think, what you want to avoid, you know, whatever creative business you're in. What I usually do, because I'm a sculptor, that's my background, is that I make a sculpture beforehand. And then I see how that can translate into a miniature sculpture, and that's something that you can then wear. But I think it's turning out kind of beautifully and unexpectedly as well. So I always like that element of surprise that you have when you're making something. You know, you have to kind of leave a little bit of margin for that to also be surprised and see how a shape can also take you into places that you didn't foresee. From a technical perspective, it's also quite close to each other. So you make something. In the jewelry's case, everything is hand carved in wax, and then we make a mold, and then we cast it in first in silver, then we cast it in gold, and then it's set with stone. So also, if you would compare that, for instance, to a bronze sculpture, you make something, say, in stone or in clay, and then you make a mold, and then you cast it in bronze. So there are a lot of similarities, and it's just the dimensions, obviously, that are different. But for me, it's something that I really feel that a piece of jewelry needs to be something in itself without necessarily being worn, if you know what I mean. I hate to see locks on bracelets, or, you know, I really try to make everything part of the sculpture or of the design. And that's why I don't think I'll ever get bored of jewelry. The technicalities can be so intricate and so complicated and so difficult to get your mind around, also because it's, you know, so small, and it has to be something that also can survive time. You know, the mechanism has to work in 20 years, 30 years from now. So that part I find really challenging and also very inspiring. So this, for instance, is part of the alligator collection, and the idea is that you can open his mouth, and then it becomes a pendant, so something that you can wear on a necklace. And then it bites its own tail. And then it becomes a ring. And everything kind of moves separately from each other. This one was actually the first one. And then I worked on that mechanism for like 2 years to get it really right, because I couldn't get it completely flat. You pull out a banana ring. It has these little monkeys palm trees.
So cool.
And these are beautiful emerald slices, completely rough, like you find them. It's part of the Memento Mori collection, so very much about the cycle of life and also kind of the decay and how from decay comes new life. So it's these wilted parrot tulips and then lots of insects like little ants and maggots. And you can detach these from the earrings so that you have just the flowers to wear. I kind of like to wear them, one just the flower and the other with the hanging part. I've never chosen the commercial path, if you know what I mean. So obviously it has to be a business, but I've never made concessions when it came to the actual creation of something. So also from a financial perspective, sometimes is that I would never limit myself in the use of stones or materials. It had to be the piece that was like the ultimate piece in my perspective. And I'm just not super good in what the masses like or want. So thank God there's an audience, a very small audience out there that likes my things. But yeah, I do a lot of one-off pieces, and then pieces that we've reproduced, are all limited editions, and they're all numbered, and they come with a certificate and stuff. So it's also kind of like part of our story. It's something that I made for the Hermitage. So they had an exhibition which was the jewelry kind of in the era of the Tsars. And they asked me to be an ambassador, and I said, yeah, but then I would also like to make a piece. So it was also kind of tied into the Memento Mori. So Remember to Die, and then emeralds and rubies were something that were used. And this is all sustainably sourced emeralds and rubies. And what's really beautiful is that I did like a spectacle setting, so the light can really fall through. And then you have an egg made out of mammoth ivory, which comes from the Siberian permafrost, so something which was really taken out of the Russian soil or ice in this case. And there's a little guy climbing out of the egg, so kind of this new birth. But here it has all these elements of kind of like ants marching up the ring, little pearl eggs being laid, a moving spider, a maggot made out of rock crystal. I mean, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's something that you could still wear. Because especially with these kind of materials and these prices, why would you want to have something that thousands, 10,000s of are being made and sold, whereas you can also invest in something which is very much about your story and, is something that's very unique to you. If you look at Generation Y and Z, for instance, I mean, they're so discerning in what they want. And I think we're in the right playing field for that, because it has to have a story, there has to be a raison d'être, it has to tie into sustainability. So they're looking for something that resonates with them, and that's not necessarily, the big luxury brands, because that's all about just churning product. So I think it's super interesting what's happening in the luxury market is that there's just such a shift of consciousness, and yeah, I mean, it's something that matches, our perspective, so that's great. So we work as an artist duo, BibiMichéle. Her name is Michèle Deiters, and she's that's also how I rolled into sculpture, is that she's been a sculptor, since I think she was 16, and she always had a studio, and as a child growing up, I was always there helping her, polishing her sculptures, tracing all these organic forms with my fingers. So I always knew from a young age onwards, that was the direction that I wanted to go. I was always helping her, and then later when I went to the art academy, she would help me with projects. So there was always this very natural synergy. And then we got a commission from a collector who was collecting our work separately, and he kind of saw this kind of magic in a certain way between us. And he said, I want you to make something for my sculpture garden in France, and it was this beautiful spot on a hill overlooking the sea. So we made this really big, it's called the tit, so a really big breast, which is like this organic hill coming out of this mountain overlooking the sea. And it was, we made it in highly polished stainless steel, so that it's super reflective, and it catches the light, and it catches, all its surroundings. So it's like this connection between heaven and earth. And then, of course, there are all these mother-daughter connotations that you could let loose on it. But that was really the starting point of our working relationship. Large mixed media installations, and there's also a lot of stone sculpting still. And that's something that for me also translates so directly into the jewelry, because working with stones, you know, in whatever capacity, is something which is super close to me, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. Also because there's always this surprise element in a stone. You know, if you have a rough piece of marble, or you have a rough aquamarine or diamond, and you know, you start cutting it, there's always things that come up, not always things that you want,
right?
But
surprises.
Always these surprises, and it's how you kind of navigate around things like that, and how you can use it to your advantage.